Hello, everyone, and welcome to the tavern. It's Wednesday, so that means I'm reviewing Daredevil Born Again. This show is being carried on the performances of two actors, and in this episode, three. And that is not enough to save this show. As I talked about in the last episode, this show has been getting low ratings. And frankly, I don't see them bouncing back anytime soon. Primarily because there is no reason to. This was easily the worst episode they've released thus far, and even though it has one really good scene and one pretty good scene, it doesn't save a whole episode. When I have to sit around for 50 minutes and there's maybe a collective total of 5 that I enjoyed, that's a problem. So without further ado, let's break it down because I got some anger to spew at this one. Okay, the story is, well, stuff happens. I don't know if I'd call it a story, but stuff does happen. First, we have Ava Ayala showing up. So we are already establishing that version of the character, as I predicted in my previous episode. Although, honestly, I can't really call that a prediction, because I'm fairly certain at one point I heard they were going to do that, and even though I forgot, subconsciously it was still kind of there. So I'm not some grand prognosticator, I'm just a guy who kind of remembered something without realizing he remembered it. Then we have a scene with BB and Daniel. While the scene does seem pointless, it does tie into a scene later on, and this is the only BB scene we get, but I'm still using the BB channel graphic anyways because this is my one time to use it for this episode. Then we cut into Matt finding out that he has a brand new client, which has a terrible payoff, and then we get a very long scene of the Kingpin and his wife in therapy. Something I really haven't talked much about in the previous episodes because it usually just zips by. It's a short sequence and I don't think it's that important. And even though I find the scenes kind of annoying, I don't really mind them. Like, they've established issues between the characters, so we're getting these little scenes. And I will admit, it is kind of nice when the couple avoids certain types of questions by saying the exact same thing at the exact same time. I liked that. That showed a connection between the characters and how their minds work. And instead of going for the comedic thing of them saying two different things, they went with something a little more serious of both of them saying the same thing, kind of cutting off certain modes of discussion with the therapist. That being said, this was a super long, mostly unnecessary sequence, other than it brings up, hey, what happened to Adam? We'll get the answer by the end of the episode. Then we cut back to Matt, who meets his new client, who is a complete buffoon. He got arrested for stealing caramel corn and demands that he gets no jail time. And Matt goes and talks to basically the DA to make a deal and whittles her down to like 10 days, which is pretty impressive for someone who has a long rap sheet. As they point out, it's like 20-some pages of things he's done. Then, on his way out of the office, he runs into Detective Powell, who was one of the police officers who got in the fight with Hector in episode 2. Basically, they both threaten each other a little bit, and that's kind of that scene. And this is followed by jumping back to Kingpin, who is at the docks talking about a revitalization plan. And then he's told all the steps you have to go through as a mayor in order to actually make that revitalization plan work. At least they're trying to make it more realistic to what city politics is. But of course, Daniel won't shut the hell up in this sequence, constantly shoots his mouth off, constantly kisses ass, is highly annoying. Then we cut back to Matt with his client, who is unhappy about getting 10 days in jail, which Matt says is probably more likely going to be about 7 days. And the guy goes on this long diatribe about how difficult it is to be a criminal and how I guess I, the viewer, am supposed to feel sorry for this guy. Well, here's the thing, dude. Could you try this for once? Not steal stuff. It doesn't feel like it's that hard to do. You know, I go through my life without stealing things. Most of the people I've met in my life have gone through their lives without stealing things. You don't need to commit crimes. No one is forcing you to. There is no alien standing behind you going, if you do not commit crime, I will eat your brains. And I'm not going to feel sorry for a criminal. Okay, you're not Jean Valjean, okay? You're not someone who was a starving child who stole bread and got way too long of a prison sentence, okay? You are a jerk who has committed multiple crimes, broken your probation multiple times, And you know what? You went to jail for getting popcorn and you deserve the full 35 days that they wanted to give him at the beginning of the negotiation. This guy's a moron, and I hate the fact that this episode is designed in a way to make me feel sorry for him. I'm not feeling sorry for a person who shoplifts, okay? And I'm not feeling sorry for any criminal for that matter. Unless you were forced to do your crime or you were framed, you're going to find very little compassion coming from me when it comes to criminals. Then we cut to the Kingpin, and he is very bored. He is at a school. There are a bunch of kids singing "We Built This City on Rock and Roll." And at the same time, his staff basically discovers that they're getting in trouble for something that Daniel blurted out while he was drinking with BB and friends. This leads to another funny scene where the Kingpin now needs to go to the Latverian Museum in order to meet the Latverian choir, who then sings the Latverian version of "We Built This City." So, funny. Laugh. Why aren't you laughing? Go watch the scene right now. Go find it. I'm sure the clip's on YouTube. Go find it. It's funny. It's hilarious. You'll be rolling on the ground. You'll be laughing so hard, you'll come back to my video and go, dude, I nearly died from laughter. Why did you tell me to do that? And I'll be like, bro, I warned you. Anyhow, he then goes to his office, yelling at everyone about this leak of information. Daniel admits to it. And when it looks like the Kingpin is about to grab him and chuck him through a window, which, would have been nice, or strangle him to death, or crush his head on the desk, or any number of violent things that this super annoying character deserves, he's like, hey, dude, I get it. I made mistakes once. I hate this show. Then we cut back to Matt, who is trying to discover where the casing was for the bullet that was used to kill White Tiger. He ends up discovering it. I don't know why the police couldn't find it, but sure. Then he goes and finds the Punisher, who's hiding out in garbage land and drinking himself to death, because that's where the Punisher would end up. Then we have what is easily the best part of the entire episode. While I'm not fond of seeing the Punisher as a washed-up drunk, I do like the fact that these two actors get right back into their characters, right back into the dynamic, and have a really good scene discussing a lot of the underlying issues that Matt is facing, including his guilt at the death of Foggy and how he feels like he's on that edge of going off and wanting to kill people the way the Punisher did. This scene really works because these are great actors. Like the empty calories of the Kingpin and Matt Murdock sequence from episode 1, this is that same category where I feel a lot of this is empty calories, but they're really delicious empty calories because these actors are so good. It doesn't save the episode, but it is a scene I very much liked and want to highlight so that no one goes and says I'm being unfair to the show. This is also followed by seeing the Kingpin talk to his wife a little bit. It's a waste of time. And then we see Matt talking to his girlfriend. Apparently they've moved in together, which I'm like, sure, that it happened at some point, I guess. I thought they were still in the early stages of dating. Either there's been some major time jumps that are occurring, or they're rushing this relationship through really fast. Finally, we end with the discovery of what happened to Adam and the Kingpin, showing that he's not as good as he was letting people think he was. There were enough moments in the show that showed that the Kingpin hadn't completely turned over a new leaf, so this is just that final confirmation of yes, the Kingpin is still a heartless bastard when he needs to be. Overall, a lot of this is running in place. Two sequences that I kind of liked did not really balance out the rest of this episode. It was a drag to watch, and I don't wish it upon anyone. Character-wise, not a lot to talk about in this episode. The big standout, of course, is Wilson Fisk, who you see characters reacting to him being a bad guy, or at least a former bad guy, and I do appreciate that, but at the same time, he has those moments of cowering from various people, just feeling like a weak character. And then we have the ending where we still see the psychopath side, which I do appreciate. It's just, it's not really done well. If you've watched the Netflix version, you know how good and how intense the Kingpin can be. And seeing him in this show is just a watered down version of that character. It's kind of sad, because what you want is a Kingpin that you love to hate. And what you get is this kind of angry mayor man. And he just doesn't feel like the same character, and it just doesn't vibe with what the Netflix show had shown us. I know that the Disney version of this character has been treated fairly terribly. And I know this show is trying to find that middle ground between Netflix and Disney, but I think that was a terrible idea. What they really needed to do was just stick with the Kingpin as a evil person and pretend all that Disney stuff never happened. And instead, here we are with a watered down Kingpin that, even though I'm complimenting aspects of the portrayal, it's still really poorly written. Then we have Daniel. I can't believe I'm talking about this schmuck. Frankly, I can't stand this character. He's highly obnoxious, highly annoying. He has his little Zoomer buzzwords, which were written by someone probably twice my age, and it just comes off hyper cringe, and he's such a kiss-ass, and it's not the kind of character you really like. I don't think there's anyone who looks at a kiss-ass character and goes like, oh yeah, I want more of that guy in this story. They usually look at that character and go, man, I want the Kingpin to backhand this guy or choke him to death, chuck him out a window, anything except for compliment him all the time. It's highly annoying, and my original prediction in the first episode was that this guy is supposed to be one of the main characters, and I am thoroughly under that belief that this guy is supposed to be one of the main characters. I don't know what they're going to do with him later on, but in the original series, it seems pretty obvious to me that he was supposed to be this like likable Zoomer dude that I'm supposed to want to see succeed. Sure. Yeah. Good work, guys. Then we have the Punisher. Now, the Punisher is an interesting one because we did the whole washed up drunk thing with him, which I do not like. I don't mind the beard. I think the beard actually looks kind of cool. But him just being in this hovel with a bunch of booze bottles, and he's clearly supposed to be a little bit drunk when he's talking to Matt. They're going back and forth, and the dialogue is okay, but the performances, like I said earlier, are excellent. That thing is still sticking with me of just the Punisher just quit and became a drunk at some point. And I don't like that. I'm not a big Punisher fan, but I had a friend in college who was a huge Punisher fan. And because of that, I have an expectation for what the Punisher is supposed to be like. And I don't think at any point Frank Castle would just give up and start drinking and do a whole, one of my fanboys, whatever. Usually when there's a copycat Punisher, the Punisher goes after that guy. And I'm sure that's what's going to happen here. Of course, for some reason, we have to begin with him being a drunk wash-up who needs to clean up his act so he can go off and do his Punisher stuff. In fact, that seems to be the plan for Wilson, Matt, and Frank. They're all supposed to be not themselves, and this is the road to becoming who they're supposed to be again. No, we don't need that. And especially for Matt, we've already kind of done that. And it would have been nice if the characters were just themselves at the height of their powers, kicking some ass, being evil, doing the whole we gotta take the Kingpin down once and for all kind of storyline. That would really be nice, but why do that when we can not? As for all the rest of the characters, there's really not much to say. They're all basically who they are, and heck, even Matt's barely in this episode, so there's not even anything I can really say about him. This episode has terrible writing, and the characters suffer because of it, and it's more reason to dislike the show. Oh, the aesthetics are bad this time around. Before I get fully into the audio, I just want to bring up something that occurred to me. The opening sequence has these bells kind of playing in the beginning, and they remind me of the funeral dirge or the Undertaker's theme. Either way, I think that's really, really appropriate for the show. It does kind of feel like a funeral march. So, not giving them points for that, just pointing it out. As for the audio of this episode, there really isn't much to say that makes this episode stand out. We have the two choir segments, which are supposed to be funny, but they're just kind of annoying. But that isn't what got me angry this time around. Earlier, I ranted about the "it's hard to be a criminal" speech, and during this time, they have like choir singing. And they're like, oh, look at this poor put-upon criminal. He only has 20-some pages of crimes he's committed. Shouldn't you feel sorry for him and what he has to go through on a daily basis? And the answer is no. Why are you trying to say that I should feel sorry for this scum? Are you kidding me? Dude has a stack of crimes he's committed. I'm not going to feel sorry for him. I don't care if they're all petty crimes. Dude is clearly a risk to any small business that he comes across. And we don't even know what his other crimes are. But I can guarantee you this. A guy like that isn't going to feel sorry about them. He was complaining that he wasn't going to get his probation. How about not having a stack of crimes, dick? Anyhow, trying to use the angelic music behind him kind of pissed me off a little bit, because this is not the appropriate time to use that music. As for visuals, there's basically nothing to talk about. No fight scenes, no really cool use of the camera, nothing. A lot of flat shots. And it's kind of it. Oh, and a lot of cutting away from violence. So, cool. We can have people drop all the F-bombs and S-bombs they want, but, can't show a little tiny bit of drop of blood. I gotta cut away from that. Can't show any violence, but you can just swear like a sailor. Let's wrap this up. Before I get started with my final thoughts, I want to point out that I'm literally wearing black and tan because I really need a drink. I actually paused this episode quite a bit, primarily because of how annoyed I was with the episode, but also the fact that I kept checking the time, which is a really bad sign. You shouldn't be doing that on a show. You should be enjoying the show. And instead, I spent most of my time waiting for it to be over, occasionally yelling. Which, I want to point out, the only advantage to pausing this thing all the time is I kept taking more notes, which is why I'm a bit more thorough in what I'm talking about this time around than I may have been in the previous episode. But it doesn't change the fact that this is a really bad show, and I get the feeling every episode is just going to get a lower score until it gets to the bare minimum number I can actually provide as a score. Which brings me to my final verdict. It's a 1.5 out of 5. This episode was pain. We have 2 really good scenes and a few little minor moments I kind of liked. But for the most part, this had terrible writing, it had terrible audio choices, it had no visual flair, and it was just a slog to get through. I'm not sure what the original show would have been, but I get the feeling this would have been the average score for the original version of this show. Now, when we get some of the other re-edited episodes, maybe things will be better. This was a terrible episode, and honestly, if I wasn't reviewing this might be my last episode. Next week is 2 episodes, I believe. I gotta sit through 2 of these next week. Ugh. I'm not looking forward to that. On the good side, it seems like everyone else is suffering along with me, so that's good. I don't see many shills coming out and talking about how good Daredevil is anymore. Granted, everyone is going to be talking about, oh my god, the scene where he's talking to Punisher is like the best scene that Marvel's ever done ever. It's just like the scenes from season 2 of Netflix. No, it's not. It's an okay scene, and it's 2 great actors, but it does not compare to those season 2 scenes. Go watch those scenes again. You tell me if they compare. But maybe I'm being too harsh. Let me know in the comments if I am being too harsh. Maybe there's something I missed. Maybe there's some good part of this episode that I was ignoring. Maybe I've just gotten so soured by how this show continues to decline. I don't know. What I do know is I am grateful that you watched, because that means at least you're enjoying my pain. So this was worth it in its own way. Anyhow, outside of plugging all the rest of my videos, all I want to say is thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the tavern.